Bonjour et bienvenue.
Hello, welcome to this exclusive interview of France 24 and Radio France International from Abuja, Nigeria. With us, we have the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hassoumi Massoudou of Niger.
Hello.
Thank you for having accepted to join us for this interview, together with Lisa Fabian of RFI. We know that Niger is going through a serious crisis since the coup of the 26th of July. The whole region and even the whole international community is shaken, and the situation is very confused. Minister, is this situation reversible so many days after the coup?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And this coup you referred to came about in clear skies. Niger was not in a crisis. Niger was not in turmoil. Niger was being successful in fighting terrorism, and economically, just look at the figures of economic growth. And there, out of the blue, the head of the presidential guard, who is supposed to provide security for the head of state, decided to kidnap him. That was the new development that came about. Now, it is kidnapping indeed. Yesterday, he was saying that he was being accused of kidnapping. What is kidnapping? Well, kidnapping is to detain someone, depriving him of his freedom of movement in a place not intended for that purpose as a result of a judicial decision. And so, therefore, it is kidnapping indeed.
Minister, can we get back to the situation?
Let me answer. It is kidnapping, but it is also a case of hostage-taking. And the ransom is to allow the junta to remain in power through a transition. The whole purpose of the putsch is transition to power. So it is kidnapping with a ransom, but it can be reversed. It is reversible because Ecowas can no longer accept that aggression should prevail over elections.
Today, is a negotiated solution possible between Nigerians?
But there's no crisis in Niger between the Niger people. There's a tiny group, a tiny band that decided to take hostage the democratically elected president with a view to maintaining or remaining in power in exchange for the freedom of the president. So there's no crisis in Niger. There's no conflict amongst the people of Niger. So there you have this situation, and ECOWAS is determined not to accept this. You have to know, when you remember the sanctions that were taken, the sanctions were there to mark the refusal of the West African community to accept that situation. But moreover, the sanctions are coupled with a threat of military intervention. I would like to say that this intervention is not going to happen against the Niger people or the country. This is something ECOWAS is used to. Back in 2017, there was Gambia. It's very recent.
Well, let's talk about that. At Abuja, you were the second extraordinary summit of ECOWAS, and there was a communique which said that there would be a military intervention. And days have gone by, and the staff of ECOWAS is still talking, and can we still consider there will be one?
Well, it is on the ECOWAS agenda. Military intervention is part of the picture. I mean, you have sanctions that come along with the threat of military intervention, but of course, you have that agenda going along with talks, but the talks have led to nothing because the junta is sticking to its guns, and you have this circle of corrupt politicians that are trying to say that you need some kind of transition, and so to impose this fait accompli, this coup, which ECOWAS will not accept. But this is not the first time there's a case of military intervention. Look at Gambia, when there was an intervention of ECOWAS under Senegal leadership of ECOWAS. There was no war of ECOWAS against Gambia or Senegal against Gambia. It is nothing special. Of course, this can be avoided if here and now, before the end, before completion of the preparations...
Exactly. What's the next stage?
Well, the next step is an operational issue I cannot answer.
It's urgent, isn't it?
Well, things are underway. Preparations are underway. The agenda is unfolding, but there's this possibility for the junta to pull out, and then, of course, anything can be negotiated. Inasmuch as President Bazoum is freed and restored in his position, everything can be negotiated. But the two agendas run in parallel. Now, there's no question in the Ecowas mandate to discuss any kind of transition, because that would be accepting the fait accompli of the coup. We do not want to go back to the 70s. That is one coup too many. This sort of backtracking has made it possible to have coups occurring in other countries, but Ecowas, the heads of states, are up in arms. They are not prepared to accept that aggression should prevail over elections. They are not prepared to accept a return to the 70s. Look at the consequences over the past 2 weeks in Niger, because there are serious consequences. In a couple of weeks, in terms of security, there were 6 attacks against military positions. Imagine that. That is only the beginning in terms of security, because their concern is not to fight terrorism anymore. And that is just one of the aspects. And you know what's going on in Niamey. There are pogroms involving mobs of young people driven by racial and ethnic hatred. You see where this can get to. So there is an urgency to get Niger back on the path of peace, stability, and economic progress. And that is what we want. And that is the whole purpose of what Ecowas has decided. That's the outlook.
Today, the junta is accusing President Bazoum of high treason. Is it a way of organizing his destitution because they didn't get his resignation?
Well, it has no legitimacy in judging anyone at all. These people who committed this heinous crime, it's more than treason. It is a criminal act. These people may not have the sort of moral claim to judge anyone or to accuse foreign heads of states or accusing them of treason and to prosecute him. They haven't got that legal capacity. They haven't even got the moral grounds to judge or to prosecute anyone. This is absurd. This is surreal to hear these people talking about prosecuting President Bazoum and his foreign accomplices. See the situation we're in. This is what they want to bring Niger back to situations we had back in the 70s. And today is 2023. Africa has a right to move forward. Africa has a right to see the expression of the ballot box, the sovereignty of the people through the ballot box and through its representatives. That is the people. It's not the mobs on the streets. And even that is only in Niamey. It's rather significant because inside the country you haven't got that at all.
Let's talk about the country. One of the paradoxes of this coup is that we don't know what the people's support is, but we do understand there's a liberation of speech because of the background of corruption and extreme poverty, which is denounced by part of the population. Is there a new spark?
Well, extreme poverty is nothing new, but it has receded down from 55 to 43%. So, well, we're not the only one. The only ones with poverty. And Niger is not a country that became poor overnight. Now, this liberation of speech is that of hate speech, of racist speech. The pogroms in the streets of Niamey is something we'd never seen before. Now, that speaks to the rest of the country. This has got to be stopped. You have to stop the degradation and the risk on the national narrative and the national fabric, the cohesion of the country. So this is important. This is why we have to act fast and put an end very quickly indeed to what's going on in Niamey.
And precisely about strategy, all the partners for strategy in West Africa and also the French and the Americans, are they all on the same wavelength as regards how to get back to constitutional order?
Well, there's a consensus, I believe. Everybody's aligned on the Ecowas position. The European Union, the United States, there hasn't been a single dissent. Everyone is aligned on the Ecowas decision. There has been no decision that was accepted or not accepted. Everything's been accepted, and I would like to thank our partners from the EU, the United States, France, and various individual European countries. And I believe that they have become aware of the need to support democratic Africa, the Africa of sovereign peoples, rather than the populist adventurers that do represent a threat, a serious threat indeed, a source of instability for the entire sub-region. This awareness is what I saw at the ECOWAS summit.
Do you think President Bazoum will be set free somehow or other soon?
I believe there is no choice. Inevitably, he will have to be freed because they are in a dead end. How can they continue down that road? The entire world is putting pressure on them, and in the country itself, the junta is not accepted. Every day in the rest of the country, there are demonstrations. There are demonstrations in Niamey as well, but people were shot at. On the day of the coup, there was a spontaneous demonstration, but the people got shot at. You only hear people, the pro-junta people, but the others are under threat of gunfire. So you have armed people against unarmed people. But in this context, the popular response is the same all over the country except for Niamey.
Massoudou, Minister of Foreign Affairs, thank you. Thank you, Minister. So this is the end of the exclusive interview from Abuja, Nigeria, the interview for France 24 and RFI. Thank you for having been with us. Stay tuned for more.
The world is ever-changing. The news doesn't wait.
France 24 gives a global perspective that an educated, intelligent, and active viewer is going to want to have to be able to fully understand the issues of the day.
That's why it will always be there to help make sense of world events.
J'ai l'habitude de suivre France 24 partout où je me trouve, et ce grâce à mon smartphone, parce que je ne reste pas souvent devant la télé.
Quand une information circule sur la toile, j'utilise l'application de France 24 pour vérifier l'authenticité.
For the best international coverage, 24 hours a day, no matter what, France 24 is with you everywhere, all the time.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.